DMV Download, the new daily podcast from WTOP News, is out now. Hosts Megan Clorty and Luke Garrett get the story behind the story.
Every weekday afternoon, Megan and I will go beyond the headlines with WTOP reporters and sources to bring you more on the biggest local stories impacting you, our fellow Washingtonians.
The DMV Download podcast is available now on all major podcast platforms. Subscribe today so you don't miss an episode. The DMV Download podcast is presented by Steamfitters Local 602.
Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Signature Theater honors Carol Burnett at the Sondheim Award Gala tonight at Capital One Hall in Tysons, Virginia. I spoke to Tony winner Santino Fontana about which songs he'll sing to honor Burnett, as well as his journey from Broadway's Tootsie to Disney's Frozen to Amazon's The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. We are being joined by
Santino Fontana. I'll be performing at the signature celebration of Carol Burnett.
Yes, and it's called the Sondheim Award Gala. And just so our listeners know, it's not going to be at Signature Theater. It's actually going to be at the brand new Capital One Hall over in Tysons, Virginia. But it's sponsored by Signature Theater, so make sure people go to the right spot. So just, I guess, in general, speak to why Carol Burnett is such a worthy person to receive this. I mean, it's pretty obvious.
From me, I mean, yeah. Well, she's an international treasure, right? I mean, I think what we consider comedy today has a lot to do with how she influenced American culture. And I as a kid, my grandparents, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, and my grandparents would always watch Carol Burnett, and we would watch it together, and we would watch it over and over and over again. I think my very first book report when I was in first grade, we had to pick a book from the library, and it was like a children's biography about Carol Burnett. So it's very special that I get to help celebrate her and perform for her, and I'm thrilled to be able to do it.
Wow, that's really cool that you even went back to the, book reports.
Yeah, isn't it nuts? It is really, it's very bizarre. I mean, it's really great, like full circle, great.
Yeah, very, very cool. And yeah, it's funny you mentioned that you used to watch with your grandparents, because we actually interviewed Carol Burnett, I don't remember, a year or so ago. And, her famous ear tug that she would always do in her show was a nod to her grandmother. That was her way of looking through the screen and saying, hey, Nana, I made it, so. Well,
yeah, and that's what yes. And I know that because I read her children's biography when I was in first grade.
So that was you're right. What am I doing? I'm speaking to the expert here since you're in
I
elementary school.
I love it.
That's awesome. All right, well, cool. So you are one of the many, Broadway stars, actors, singer, performers that is going to be, paying tribute. So what exactly are you going to be performing? Do you know yet?
Yes, I'm singing. I don't know if I'm supposed to tell. I think it's supposed to be a surprise to her. But her favorite Sondheim song is "Anyone Can Whistle." I'm going to be singing that, and I'm also going to be singing "Buddy's Blues," which was from the show that she did on Broadway last, I believe. Putting It Together, I think, was the name of the last Broadway show she was in. I should look that up. It's a while ago now, but it was in that show. It was in one of the shows that she did on Broadway.
Gotcha.
Also a Sondheim song.
Gotcha. And who else is going to be, do you know who all is going to be performing there with you? And there's some real heavy hitters here.
I know Bernadette Peters I think there's also a group of DC local folks who are fantastically talented that will also be joining Signature Favorites. Yeah,
that's awesome. And yeah, I mean, there's so much we could talk about. I mean, I guess it makes sense that Bernadette Peters would be doing this because, she was in the Annie, the film version with Carol Burnett. So that's another cool tie, right?
And even way before that, she was the first guest star, and this is so lame that I know all of this. Bernadette was the first guest star on Carol's show, where she sang and was like a guest, actor in their sketches. And the reason the reason I know that, I was in Hello Dolly with Bernadette for a couple months on Broadway a couple years ago, and I was leaving the stage after one of the shows, and I heard Santino, And I turned and, there was Carol Burnett. She walked up to me and I was like, how do you know my name? And she was like, oh, I'm a fan, blah, blah, blah. I'm friends with Bernadette. And I said, do you mind if I get a photo with you? And she said, I would be offended if you didn't. And that kind of kicked off a crazy friendship. And then she came to the opening of Tootsie, and we've been friends ever since. So it's kind of bizarre. And it all does tie with Bernadette Peters. So yeah, crazy world.
That's got to be wild. Yeah, so you grew up reading the book and doing book reports on Carol Burnett, probably watching Bernadette Peters and I don't know, the Jerk with Steve Martin, all kinds of stuff. And now you're going to be friends with all of them. Now, you are friends with all of them.
I am friends with. That's what's nuts. That's It's so surreal getting an email from Carol or from Bernadette. Yeah, it's crazy.
Forgive me if this is a dumb question, but she will be there getting, as you guys sing to her?
She will be there. Carol will be there. Yes.
Awesome. Now, do you know if it's something where she gets up on stage and does like an acceptance speech, or is it more like the Kennedy Center Honors where she just sits up, and you guys perform tributes to her?
To be honest, I have no idea. Guess
we'll find out.
I go where my phone tells me. That's what I do.
It's worked out well for you this far, for sure. And talk about, and you mentioned, in addition to you, Bernadette Peters, there's going to be, local favorites. Let me list some of them. Tracy Lynn Oliveira, Nova Payton, Bobby Smith. You get Mark G. Meadows and John Calfleish on piano accompaniments and stuff. So it's a really great lineup. I guess talk about why Sondheim is sort of let's talk about that. We've talked a lot about Carol Burnett, but why is the Sondheim angle especially, poignant now? Because we just lost him.
Yeah, well, he just passed away, and I think there's nobody who has made a bigger impression on theater in this last century, let alone musical theater, but theater in general, and art. I mean, I'm friends with John Weidman, he wrote Assassins with, as well as Pacific Overtures, and I wrote to him right after Sondheim passed, and I said, I can't believe he's gone. He seemed like he would always be here. And John's response was, he will. The movie of West Side Story had yet to come out, or I think it just come out. And then, we're not going to have to go very far. His work will be with us forever. So, and it will continue to be done. So, it's especially poignant that we get to celebrate Carol via Sondheim's, music and lyrics. And she was obviously very close with him as well. And finally getting to do it after this pandemic insanity. So, it's exciting.
Yeah, you mentioned West Side Story, and then didn't he, his voice was, I think, also in Tick Tick Boom. Doesn't he call on the answering machine?
That's rare. That's correct. He's in Tick Tick Boom. But also, the amount of things it's going to keep coming up. You're not going to be able to get. Company is on Broadway right now.
Yeah.
They're going to be doing another movie of Gypsy. I'm sure there will be another production of Gypsy. His work will never. He has influenced our culture in a massive way.
Oh yeah, just ubiquitous at this point. Even the influences have influenced other things that have influenced other things. Like the ripple effect is crazy. Sondheim is a legend.
Stay tuned for the rest of my chat with Santino Fontana, but first a message from a fellow WTOP podcast.
DMV Download, the new daily podcast from WTOP News, is out now. Hosts Megan Clorty and Luke Garrett get the story behind the story.
Every weekday afternoon, Megan and I will go beyond the headlines with WTOP reporters and sources to bring you more on the biggest local stories impacting you, our fellow Washingtonians.
The DMV Download podcast is available now on all major podcast platforms. Subscribe today so you don't miss an episode. The DMV Download podcast is presented by Steamfitters Local 602.
Welcome back to Beyond the Fame for the rest of my conversation with Santino Fontana.
Well, you're great at Broadway yourself. Let's remind listeners, you won the friggin' Tony for Tootsie. How exciting was that? And not just winning, but, getting to shape a role that, Dustin Hoffman made so famous on screen.
Yes, that's true. I mean, going to the Tony Awards when you're nominated is a lot like going to a wedding where you may end up the groom. So it's
like with Cinderella, you weren't the groom, right? You were just the best man.
I was not. Billy Porter was the groom, but I was still dressed up in case the bride wanted me, or the groom wanted me. It doesn't matter. The
glass slipper fits, man.
Yeah. No, it's yes, I'm very lucky to be in that group of people, and honored to be. So.
Well, tell me a little bit more about the role too, because the movie itself was one of the great. It was a Sidney Pollack movie, and what is it? You're supposed to be a tomato. It makes me really a great look at early Broadway stuff too. And you got the Bill Murray throwaway lines, like I think we're getting into a weird area. Like, well, actually, by the way, sorry, I'm geeking out now. My favorite line from the movie is, "How far can you pull back the camera?" And he goes, "How about Cleveland?"
Yes, I know.
But doing it on stage, trying, what was it like trying to make that for the modern era, because, the cross-dressing thing, some like a Hot Miss Doubtfire, Tootsie, etc. But like today, it's like we live in a new world now. So how do you sort of update that for our modern sensibility?
Well, luckily, Robert Horn, who also won a Tony for Best Book for Tootsie, he adapted it. And thank God I didn't have to do that, because there's so many, minefields in there. I think he did a great job of reminding us this is a story about a desperate man who makes a terrible decision, but an entertaining one, and learns a lot about stepping inside of somebody else's shoes. It was great to be able to be in a theater where people were laughing that much and that regularly and so joyful. That was really great, as well as. Luckily, I didn't worry about the comparisons to the movie, because it was a completely different thing. It took place in the theater, about the theater, and it wasn't. So we weren't dealing with a lot of the stuff from the movie. It also, the movie. What's so brilliant about that film is you're observing it. There aren't a lot of jokes in the sense of like set up punchline. You're observing characters, which is what's so brilliant about it. And Larry Gelbart wrote the script, and he's a genius. This is a theater piece where you have to be engaged with an audience, and they can't just be observing this story. So, and Robert had to do all of that in the adaptation, and he did. But really, the thing I take away from it, just the family that we created in that cast and the crew was great, and I'm still very close with all of them.
Right. Plus it was a musical this time, so that's another big difference from the film.
Big difference. Yeah. Yes. Big difference.
Big difference. Well, you combine both musicals and movies you probably know what I'm going to say, or every child out there knows what I'm going to say. They probably hear your voice and they say, "Oh my gosh, it's Hans from Frozen."
Yes, that's right.
Does that ever happen to you? Do people do kids say notice the voice?
No, never. I mean, I'll be on an airplane and, sitting next to me will be a kid watching Frozen, and I'm always tempted to lean over and scare the hell out of them, but I don't.
Oh, come on. You got to do it just one time.
No, it's pretty great it's an amazing, a couple weeks ago, I was at Carnegie Hall with Kristen Bell and Josh Gad. We were singing the songs of Bobby and Kristen Lopez, and we were talking. It's such a strange little private club that you're in, where you walk around with this big secret. You're walking through Times Square, and there's a girl dressed. There's a big doll person dressed up as Elsa, like a strolling character. Or you go to Disneyland and there are kids dressed up as Anna and Elsa. Or it's Halloween and ding dong, there's Anna saying trick or treat. It's bizarre and great. And it's super cool, It's just super, super cool.
I mean, it's an all-timer. Let it go, outlive both of us, man. Seriously.
I've said it before. I worked 5 days over 2.5 years on that movie. And one of the 5 recording days was just sounds. It was just coughing and breathing and grunting. That was an entire day. So 5 days, 2.5 years, I liken it to being a sperm donor to a kid who becomes president. I was kind of involved. I was there at the beginning. I know I had a lot to do with that part of it, but I have very little to do with its success at becoming president. And that's how I feel about Frozen.
A sperm donor to a kid that's become president. I've never heard that before. I love it.
I think it's pretty accurate.
You donate, and then you send them off into the unknown.
And then, 2 years later, they become this huge success, and they're running the world. And you're like, wow, great.
Good job. Proud of you.
I'm so proud of you.
Proud of you. Love, Hans.
Yeah, exactly. Love Prince Hans, the romantic hero of the first half. Yeah,
exactly. Well, that's hilarious. Well, very, very cool, Hans of Frozen. And Michael Dorsey of Tootsie. There's so much. We've talked stage, we've talked film. I want to hit your TV roles really quick. What was it like being in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend as Greg?
Crazy Ex-Girlfriend was great. That was right after Cinderella, and then Act 1 on stage, and then Crazy Ex was supposed, it was a musical TV show, which at the time was incredibly new. Aside from like Glee, no one had really done that, or Smash. So I had a great time doing that. I also got to do, I was in Shades of Blue with Jennifer Lopez and Ray Liotta at the same time, which was great. And then fast forward to most recently, I'm in this most recent season of Marvelous Mrs. Maisel on Amazon, which people can still watch, playing the manager of a strip club.
Exactly what you'd expect for Hans to be doing later in life.
It's weird being an actor because everyone associates you with the last thing you did, and yet if you look back far, I did I was working with Bobby Cannavale on something, and I asked him how he was doing, and he had just been in a play on Broadway where he played a drug dealer, and I was like, "How's it going?" And he's like, you play one effing drug dealer. Like all he's getting was drug dealer parts. Right. Yes, it's strange that I think after Crazy Ex, people kept expecting me to play like depressed alcoholics, and then after Cinderella, I think people kept thinking, oh, he's just going to keep playing charming princes, and then after this, maybe people will keep thinking I'm going to be a strip club owner. I don't know.
Yeah. And did you forgive me if you mentioned did you mention Mozart in the Jungle? Everyone's got to check that show out.
I didn't. I forgot. You're right. I got to play Mozart in the Jungle, also on Amazon, opposite Gail Garcia now.
And the great Malcolm McDowell, and another Bernadette Peters connection.
And Bernadette Peters, you're absolutely right.
And crazy. That, my friend, is how we bring it full circle, like a couple of pros, back around.
That's right.
to Bernadette Peters and yourself, Santino Fontana, and a bunch of local favorites. Saluting Carol Burnett at the 2022 Sondheim Award presentation Monday night, May 16th. Signature Theater is putting it on, but it's going to be at Capital One Hall in Tysons. Make sure you head to the location, because if you go to Signature, they won't be there. But thank you so much for joining us. And I guess before we run, just speak directly to the listeners. Tell them, pretend I'm not even here. Just speak directly to them. Hey guys, come on out. It's going to be a good time.
Sure. Hey, everybody, please come out Monday, May 16th to the Sondheim celebration of Carol Burnett. What is it called? What are they calling it? The Sondheim...
Let me check. Sondheim Award Gala.
Sondheim Award Gala. Hey, guys, come out May 16th to celebrate Carol Burnett at the Sondheim Award Gala, held by the Signature Theater Company, but in Tysons, Virginia, in Capital One Hall. Come out. I'm Santino Fontana. Please join me and Bernadette Peters and Carol Burnett.
I mean, come on. That's a trifecta right there. You got to come, everybody. Hey, thanks so much for doing this. This was a blast. I particularly loved hearing about the kids watching Frozen on the airplane. That's hilarious. You're hilarious. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. We'll catch you later.
Thanks, man.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play. Listen local with Podcast DC.